My golden brother betrayed me for the sake of the family business, but now he regrets choosing greed over family. My name's Liam. I'm 27. You ever feel like life handed you a script and forgot to give you a starring role? Welcome to my family. Growing up, I thought we were rock solid. A powerhouse clan running a successful luxury home flipping business. My dad, always going on about the family legacy, like we were the Kennedys of drywall. But let's be real. My older brother Zach was the golden boy, the crown prince. The whole damn monarchy rolled into one. Zach, 31, is the guy everyone wants to be. Or at least that's what Dad says. He's charming, confident, the kind of guy who could sell ice to an Eskimo and have them thank him for it. Meanwhile, I'm good with numbers. Translation: I'm the nerd in the back crunching data while Zach plays CEO Barbie in the front. And yeah, I'm good with numbers. Too good, maybe. Half the strategies that made the company successful? My brainchild. But do I get credit? Nope. Zach gets to stand in the spotlight, basking in glory while I'm the guy making sure the lights don't go out. Anyway, picture this. Family dinner. It's steak night, and Dad's got that serious look like he's about to drop some major news. I'm thinking maybe he's finally going to acknowledge all the work I've done. Ha! Wishful thinking. Zach, the business is yours, Dad says, casual as you please, like he's handing over the remote control. The room goes dead silent. My fork hits my plate. I'm staring at Dad, then at Zach, who's grinning like he just hit the Powerball. No, thank you for your contributions, Liam. No, we couldn't have done it without you. Just Zach, sitting there like he's already picking out his kingly robes. For a second, I thought maybe I'd misheard. Wait, what? I almost said. But no, Dad was crystal clear. Zach is the guy. I'm just there. The rest of the dinner? A blur. Mom's gushing about how proud she is. Zach's making plans like he's been waiting for this his whole life. And me? I'm just trying to keep my face from melting into a puddle of disbelief. That night, lying on my couch staring at the ceiling, it hit me. My family doesn't see me. Not really. To them, I'm a cog in the machine. Replaceable. Forgettable. And if they don't care about me, why the hell should I care about them? But here's the thing. I'm not the kind of guy who takes this lying down. Zach might think he's won, but the game's not over yet. Not even close. The following week, Zach summoned me to his new office, the one that used to be Dad's. Let's be clear. The place still smelled like Dad's stale coffee and old leather, but there was Zach, already marking his territory like a dog with something to prove. He was sprawled out in Dad's massive chair, spinning a pen between his fingers like he'd been practicing for this moment his whole life. It was like watching a middle schooler play pretend CEO. Liam, he said, flashing me that overly polished grin. You know the type. Fake enough to make your teeth itch. Dad and I had a little chat, and we think it's time for you to, pivot in the company. Now, when someone uses the word pivot, you know you're about to get screwed. I felt my stomach twist. What's that supposed to mean? I asked, keeping my tone steady, even though I could already feel the bullshit rolling in. Well, Zach started, leaning back like he was the king of Wall Street. We need someone to manage the construction sites. You know, boots on the ground. I blinked at him, trying to process. You want me out of the office? Are you kidding me? Zach shrugged like he'd just suggested I try a new Starbucks order, not rearrange my entire career. It's not personal, bro, he said, as if that made it better. But I've got a vision, and you're just not part of it. There it was. The "you're not part of it" hit me like a truck. This wasn't about roles or responsibilities. It was about erasing me. The years I spent building systems, managing accounts, closing deals, poof, gone. Zach wasn't just taking over. He was rewriting the entire narrative, and I was the guy getting cut from the script. For a moment, I just stood there, staring at him. His smug face, his perfect hair, the stupid pen spinning in his hand. Every nerve in my body screamed to grab that pen and chuck it at his perfectly curated ego. But I didn't. Instead, I swallowed my pride, nodded, and walked out. The air in the hallway felt suffocating. By the time I reached the parking lot, my head was spinning. Who the hell did Zach think he was? This wasn't just a promotion for him. It was a coup. And me? I'd been demoted to a glorified construction site babysitter. As I unlocked my car, my hands were shaking. Not from fear, not even from anger. From pure, unfiltered determination. If Zach thought he could push me out and run the show unchecked, he had another thing coming. Not part of the vision, I muttered to myself as I started the engine. We'll see about that, bro. I wasn't going down without a fight, and Zach had no idea who he'd just messed with. Family dinners became my personal hell. Zach, of course, was the self-appointed king of the table. Every single meal turned into the Zach show, starring Zach's overinflated ego and a supporting cast of mom and dad who were way too eager to clap for every word out of his mouth. He'd ramble on about deals he clearly didn't understand, using buzzwords he probably Googled 5 minutes before dinner. And my parents? They'd nod like he was reciting scripture. Meanwhile, I'd sit there chewing my food like it was the only thing keeping me from snapping. But one night, I'd had enough. Zach was in the middle of some long-winded story about leveraging synergies or some nonsense, and I couldn't take it anymore. Do you even care about this family, Zach? I blurted, slamming my fork down. Or is this just the Zach show now? The table went dead silent. Zach turned to me with that smug little smirk, the one that made me want to wipe it off his face with my plate. Jealousy doesn't suit you, little bro, he said, leaning back like he'd just dropped the ultimate mic. Jealousy? I shot back, my voice rising. You've hijacked the business, you're driving it straight into the ground, and you act like we should be throwing you a parade for it. Dad slammed his fist on the table, making the dishes rattle. Enough, Liam. Zach is in charge now. Respect that. Respect? I laughed bitterly, standing up. My chair scraped loudly against the floor, but I didn't care. You've turned your back on everything this family is supposed to stand for, and you want me to respect that? Zach just leaned back further, crossing his arms like the smug villain he was born to be. If you don't like it, maybe you should leave. There it was, the final blow. Zach had officially invited me to leave my own family. And the worst part, nobody stopped him. Not mom, not dad. They just sat there, staring at their plates, like this was totally fine. I grabbed my coat and walked out, slamming the door behind me. The cool night air hit me, but it didn't cool me down. My hands were shaking as I got in my car. I sat there for a minute, staring at the house where I grew up, where I thought I belonged. But now, it felt like a stranger's home. As I drove away, the weight of it all hit me. It wasn't just Zach. My entire family had chosen him. They'd chosen his ego, his lies, his vision over me. And in that moment, I realized something painful, but true. I'd been disowned without anyone actually saying the words. But if they thought I was going to quietly fade into the background, they were wrong. Zach wanted to turn this into a game. Fine. I was about to play it better than he ever could. After that nightmare of a dinner, I couldn't shake the feeling that Zach's vision for the company was just smoke and mirrors. So I did what any self-respecting, totally underestimated younger sibling would do. I started digging. Late nights, coffee by the gallon, spreadsheets that could rival the Bible in length. And let me tell you, Zach might have thought he was untouchable, but the guy couldn't cover his tracks to save his life. What I found? Oh, it was a goldmine of stupidity. Zach had been treating the company like his personal piggy bank. A yacht. Yes, a literal yacht. Luxury cars, plural. And just to top it all off, a penthouse apartment that looked like it belonged in a rapper's music video. All of it paid for with company funds. But the cherry on this train wreck Sunday? He'd taken out a massive loan against the company's assets. If he couldn't pay it back, and spoiler alert, he couldn't, the whole business would tank faster than his credibility. By the time I pieced it all together, my blood was boiling. I wasn't just mad, I was volcanic. I stormed into his office, papers clutched in my hand like I was about to serve him a subpoena. He was sitting there, of course, lounging like some Wall Street villain, casually scrolling through his phone. "You're stealing from the company," I snapped, slamming the evidence on his desk so hard that his coffee mug wobbled. Zach glanced at the papers, then back at me, completely unfazed. "It's called reinvestment, Liam," he said with a smirk that made me want to launch his overpriced coffee straight into his face. "You wouldn't understand. In what world is this reinvestment?" I shot back, pointing to the highlighted numbers. "This isn't reinvestment, it's theft. You're going to ruin us." Zach stood up, slowly, like he was about to deliver some Oscar-worthy villain monologue. He was taller than me, but the way he loomed over his desk made him look like he thought he was 10 feet tall. "Careful, Liam," he said, his voice dropping low. "You don't want to make me your enemy." For a second, I almost laughed. Was this guy serious? Did he think he was in a mob movie? But the look in his eyes wasn't just arrogance, it was dangerous. This wasn't just a power trip. Zach was willing to burn the whole house down if it meant staying on top. I didn't bother arguing. I turned on my heel and walked out, my hands shaking, not from fear, but from sheer fury. Zach wasn't just incompetent, he was a liability. And if he thought I was going to sit back and let him sink the ship, he had another thing coming. The war had officially begun. When I walked into Dad's office with a folder full of evidence, I thought, this is it. This is the moment where everything changes. I mean, what parent wouldn't want to know their golden child was running a full-blown financial circus? I had the receipts, literal receipts, for every yacht, every penthouse party, every overpriced car Zach thought was essential for his image. There was no way Dad could ignore this, right? Wrong. I laid everything out on his desk like a lawyer, presenting the closing argument of a lifetime. Pages and pages of highlighted numbers, transactions, and a very obvious loan that screamed, "Hey, I'm here to ruin the family business." Dad leaned back in his chair and let out the most tired sigh I'd ever heard. Like the evidence I'd spent hours compiling was just a grocery list he didn't feel like dealing with. "Zach's under a lot of pressure," he said, rubbing his temples like he was the victim in this situation. "You need to cut him some slack." I blinked. Twice. Surely I'd misheard. "Cut him some slack?" I practically yelled, waving the papers in his face. "He's going to destroy everything you built." But nope. Dad wasn't budging. He shook his head like I was some overdramatic teenager complaining about curfew. "This is a family business, Liam. We handle things privately." Privately. Right. Translation: let Zach get away with it because he's Zach, and you're just you. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My voice went sharp enough to cut glass. "You're really going to let him get away with this? After everything you've worked for? After everything I've done to keep this business afloat?" Dad didn't even flinch. "He's your brother," he said, like that was supposed to be some magical cure for Zach's dumpster fire behavior. "Family sticks together." I stared at him, feeling the last shred of hope crumble. It didn't matter what Zach did. Dad would always back him, no matter how bad it got. And me? I was just collateral damage. "Fine," I said, my voice cold as I grabbed the papers off his desk. "If you won't stop him, I will." The words hung in the air like a challenge, but Dad didn't rise to it. He just looked at me with that same tired expression, like I was the problem for daring to hold Zach accountable. I walked out, slamming the door so hard the glass rattled. For the first time, I felt it deep in my chest. I wasn't part of this family anymore. Not really. And if they didn't want me, fine. But they were about to find out just how much damage an outcast could do. Fueled by a cocktail of rage and pure spite, I decided it was time to take matters into my own hands. If Dad wanted to sweep Zach's crimes under the rug, fine. But me? I was about to drag that rug out into the street, shake it out for the whole world to see, and maybe light it on fire for good measure. I reached out to a journalist I knew from college, a guy who loved a juicy story almost as much as he loved exposing people who thought they were untouchable. And Zach? Oh, he was about to find out what untouchable really meant. The story dropped 2 days later, and let me tell you, it didn't just hit the local papers. It detonated. Bold front-page headline: Golden Boy Zachary's business scandal. Below that, a not-so-flattering photo of Zach with a grin that screamed, I have no idea my life is about to fall apart. The article detailed every shady transaction, every misstep, every ounce of his yacht-fueled ego trip. The fallout was immediate. Investors started pulling out faster than a bad Tinder date. Clients canceled contracts left and right. The office phones were ringing non-stop, probably with a mix of angry clients and panicked lawyers. Zach's empire of lies was crumbling, and it was beautiful. Then my phone rang. Zach. I picked up, and the second I said hello, he unleashed the kind of screaming rant that would have made a reality TV producer proud. "You've ruined us!" he yelled, his voice cracking under the weight of his tantrum. I leaned back in my chair, calm for the first time in what felt like weeks. "No, Zach," I said, letting the words land like a punch. "You ruined yourself." There was a pause, just a second of silence before he hung up, but it was enough to let me know I'd struck a nerve. Next came Dad's call. His voice was shaking, a mix of anger and disappointment that might have made me feel guilty if, they hadn't treated me like a disposable extra my whole life. "How could you do this, Liam?" he said, like I'd burned down the family home instead of exposing the truth. "You've humiliated the family." I didn't even flinch. "No, Dad," I said, my tone sharper than broken glass. "Zach humiliated the family. I just told the truth." There was a long silence on the other end, and for once, Dad didn't have a comeback. Maybe he was finally realizing that coddling Zach wasn't going to save him this time. Or maybe he was just too stunned to argue. Either way, I hung up first. As I sat there staring at the phone, I felt something I hadn't in a long time. Satisfaction. Zach's house of cards was falling, and for once, I wasn't the one getting buried in the rubble. The company went down faster than Zach's business-savvy facade. Lawsuits came flying in like angry pigeons at a bread feast, and Zach's massive loan. Yeah, that defaulted too. The bank swooped in and took everything. The office building, the fancy furniture, and even Zach's precious yacht. Oh, the yacht. I hope he waved goodbye to it with the same smirk he wore when he kicked me out of the business. For the first time in his charmed little life, Zach had to deal with real consequences. No Dad to bail him out, no investors to cover his mess. Just Zach, alone in the rubble of his empire, looking like a kid who just found out Santa isn't real. Meanwhile, I was thriving. I'd started freelancing as a consultant, and since my name wasn't tied to the scandal, my reputation was squeaky clean. Clients actually respected my work. Imagine that. But the family? Total dumpster fire. Mom was probably clutching her pearls so hard they were turning into dust. And Dad? Well, silence speaks volumes. Then Mom called. The moment her name popped up on my phone, I knew this wasn't going to be a quick chat. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Liam," she started, her voice thick with desperation. "We need to talk." I rolled my eyes so hard I practically sprained something. "About what?" "Zach," she said, her tone dipping into that classic mom guilt. "He's struggling." Oh, struggling. Poor Zach. The golden child who could do no wrong was finally having a tough time. Color me shocked. I almost laughed, but instead, I just let out this sharp little exhale. "He's struggling?" I said, leaning into the sarcasm. Maybe he should have thought about that before he embezzled half the company's money. "Liam," she said, her voice breaking like she was auditioning for an Oscar. "He's still your brother." Ah, there it was. The family guilt trip. Classic. "Is that supposed to mean something to me now?" I shot back. Because it sure didn't mean anything to him when he shoved me out of the company and into the dirt. There was a pause. She was probably regrouping for round 2. "Please, just come to dinner," she said finally. "We need to talk as a family." As a family. That almost made me laugh out loud. What family? The one that threw me under the bus the moment Zach snapped his fingers? But against my better judgment, and trust me, my better judgment was screaming, I agreed. Because some stupid, naive part of me wanted to see if there was anything left to salvage. I hung up the phone, staring at the screen for a moment before tossing it onto the couch. This dinner wasn't going to be about fixing things. It was going to be a post-mortem of the train wreck Zach created. And honestly, I was ready to see the wreckage up close. When I showed up for dinner, Zach looked like a shadow of himself. Gone was the cocky smirk. He looked up at me, eyes hollow. "I screwed up," he said quietly. "Yeah, you did," I replied, my voice cold. "And you dragged the family down with you." He nodded, tears pooling in his eyes. "I don't expect forgiveness. I don't know how to fix this." For the first time, I saw the scared little brother behind the golden facade. But forgiveness? That was a long way off. I left that night without making any promises. Maybe Zach could change. Maybe the family could heal. But one thing was certain. I'd never let them push me into the shadows again.